Welcome again. Human design is a synthesis of astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah and Vedic philosophy, centering around the division of personalities into 5 energy types based on a person's birth date, birth time and birthplace, and rooted in the idea that every individual was created to live on Earth with purpose and intent. It was originated by Alan Robert Krakauer, who published a book called The Human Design System under the pseudonym Ra Uru Hu in 1992. Krakauer developed the Human Design System following a mystical experience in 1987. In common with the Enneagram, Human Design is a powerful self-awareness system that opens up a whole new world of possibilities and avenues when it comes to self-knowledge, self-compassion and development. Distinct from the Enneagram, Human Design was originally intended for parents to support their children in being who they are instead of the repositories for our projections, which is just so lovely for me. Robin Winn is this amazing coach of coaches that I found when scratching around Amazon for books on human design. Robin came from a background of bodywork and was a practicing therapist and diamond approach teacher for years before she even came to specialise in human design. She's had an incredibly rich professional and academic background, which you can read a little about in any of her best-selling books on human design. Links in the episode notes. My purpose in inviting Robin onto the podcast was dualfold, really. I wanted more data to feed into my intuition to help me to decide whether I want to go deeper into the system and offer anyone into the Enneagram but new to human design like me an entry point. The outcome of the conversation is that I remain deeply curious about the system and keen to meet with Robin again, although similar to when I first encountered the Enneagram, I noticed that my uptake is quite slow. The second part of this interview is Robin connecting me with the transmission of my chart, which was obviously really enjoyable for me, but you might find a little difficult to follow or boring. You can always just listen to the first part of the chat. I hope that you enjoy it. Share with people listening about what you currently do in the world, including how that involves human design and, if relevant, also the Enneagram as well.
The Enneagram and human design infiltrate every interaction I have with every person. If I don't know their type or I don't know their human design, my mind is spinning. It's a natural lens to understand and support and bring more compassion to any situation. Both of those systems do that. I was a body worker, then I was a psychotherapist, and then I did mentoring, spiritual counseling, more in the diamond approach, using the Enneagram with people. And it was in the mix of that I encountered human design after I'd done all those. And it was so revelatory for me with my clients. It made such a huge impact that I actually ended up shifting from doing psychotherapy to becoming a human design coach, and then eventually starting my own training for coaches, therapists, healers to use human design with their clients. That is my passion. That is my heart desire, is for more coaches like yourself who think it's too complex and they already have something, to open to a new possibility of this lens. It's like, and one of the stories you probably remember from my book is, you know, my dad was a cardiovascular surgeon, and I remember when he came home and said, oh my gosh, they have these new machines, they're called MRIs, and they give us so much more information. And that's how I see human design. Yeah, we had x-rays and then we got MRIs, right? And they're still good. We still do x-rays, but MRIs do something else. Human design brings another lens to look at and understand at another level what's going on with people, with ourselves, with our clients.
Cool. So your main energies these days in a work context is empowering coaches to use this system.
And that's why I write the books, right? I've written 3 so far.
And when was Understanding Your Clients written?
It was 3 years ago.
Oh, 3 years ago. Okay, so you're on
Yeah,
like one a year at the moment.
one a year. Yeah, exactly.
That is a schedule and a half.
Yeah.
Thank you. And can I ask about your type on the Enneagram, Robin, and your early encounters with the Enneagram?
Yeah. So I must have been 23,
Mm.
which was, a long time ago. I'm turning 64. It was in a martial arts class, actually. The teacher was having us do our type to understand how we worked. And I was sure I was a 6. I was 100% sure I was a 6 because I had so much fear at that time. Now, if you look at my human design chart, it makes sense why I would have thought that. I'm actually a 1. I have a 1 fixation.
Okay, Enneagram 1.
And then I went on to study. At that time, I was living in Berkeley. It was the time of Helen Palmer, and there were, groups all over the place. It was incredible.
Mm.
And I went from learning through Helen Palmer and that world to studying with Faisal Muqaddam, who was, a co-creator of the diamond approach with Hamid.
Mm-hmm.
And then they split and went separate ways. Faisal's a 4, Hamid's a 5. They had different.
Oh, I'm dying to know more about that story, but that's for another time, maybe.
Yeah, so I spent basically almost 20 years with Faisal working the Enneagram through a psychospiritual lens.
Amazing.
Really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you work with the instinctual aspect of the Enneagram much? Or?
Yeah, I'm survival, but I don't work with that. That hasn't been the focus. That wasn't Faisal's focus. So I'm interested, though. Recently, a friend of mine who went through Faisal with me start talking about Beatrice and the subtypes and her work with the subtypes. And,
It's a big focus in the Enneagram community at the moment, it seems to me. There's lots of books coming out about instincts and instinct preferences, but you didn't deal with that with Faisal.
No, that's not my area of expertise with the Enneagram.
Cool. So, as you said, the human design came to you after a lot of these sort of heavyweight bodies of spiritual teachings and disciplines, not just the Enneagram, but Byron Katie's work, which is obviously seminal, and Diamond Approach. So what specifically did human design allow to unfold?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I always have come from an innovative, non-traditional path. I'm not one of those who leans towards the conservative. Even getting my psychotherapy license was an internal struggle for me because it felt like it was going into a system that was going to trap me somehow or be patriarchal. And I did my graduate work in feminist psychology. That said, I realized when I learned human design that I still had a bias towards mother blaming, for one, which I didn't realize, or pinning past psychological events on current possibilities would be one way to say it. So let me just explain that a little bit. There's a victim screen or filter. Carolyn Mace used to talk about it like, it's a currency, like pain is a currency in our culture, and who's got the most pain, and there's some identification with pain as a structure. With human design, what I saw was that the things people were suffering with, and I'm not saying that there wasn't pain, because there was, and there was wounding in the past. I'm not denying that at all. But many of those issues would have existed regardless of who the person was doing them. So regardless of whether it was the mother or the school teacher or the brother or the whatever, that to be a projector, for example, in human design, it's rare that someone would grow up feeling seen. I do have friends and people I know who were seen and recognized, but that's one of the challenges of a projector. So if we're stuck back here on this happened to me because my mother or my father didn't see me or recognize me, that's why I can't step out into the world. It's a misplaced responsibility when we can see, oh my gosh, this is what I'm up against. This is what I have to work with. Then we can have power with that. We can learn to navigate that. We can be smart with that. Okay. So the Enneagram helped me understand people's egoic patterns. Human design helped me see who people were in their brilliance, in their genius, in their possibility, in their potential. It's like a blueprint of who you are. I call it the entelechy. If you read my third book, it's the entelechy. It's like the acorn has the entelechy to become an oak tree. Each one of us are uniquely designed. There's so much pathology in psychology.
Yeah.
And even in the Enneagram, there's a pathology that's woven into it. Oh my God, you're an 8. Okay, I've got to, like there's, oh, you're a 4. Okay, there's so much projection and pathology. In human design, the basic understanding, the way I was taught it, is each person is perfect. Their blueprint is perfect. There's no hierarchy. It's like a puzzle, a big giant puzzle, and each one of us are needed in that puzzle. We're needed to live who we are. We bring our light, we bring our dharma when we do that. When we try to live somebody else's puzzle piece, we suffer and humanity loses out. So the note is different. The note is not what's your fixation. The note is who are you? Who are you? And how can we support you to allow that being to come forth to give his or her gifts, to give their gifts to humanity. So the entry point is that there's no hierarchy.
Right.
I mean, you're a manifesting generator. I write about manifesting generators. Oh my gosh, you won the lotto. It's incredible. The capacities you have are remarkable. I can project onto that is better than being what many people say, just a generator. But that's not accurate. That will never be accurate. That is a societal projection. If we take someone like Oprah Winfrey, well, she's just a generator. Hello. How are we going to diminish that, right? But she didn't get her power from speaking on her own on a pulpit. She didn't go into politics, and she didn't do that. She got her power through relationship. Generators, projectors, reflectors, we get our power through relationship. You can step out on your own and speak. You have that capacity and be heard if you're living your entelechy, right? If that's not happening, then we need to look and see, well, what's going on here? What, with your open head, what beliefs have you taken on? How have you been conditioned? Can we clear those and get you back on track with yourself? That's all we're trying to do with human design, is get you back on track with you.
I can see how it adds something quite different to the Enneagram. So in your book, Understanding Clients, you name the basics of the human design system as type, strategy, and authority. Is that correct, Robin? Those are the three sort of. Got it. If we can now just try and set out some distinctions about those aspects.
So if you think of a puzzle and you think of, well, there's the sky pieces, there's the earth pieces, there's the water pieces, right? There's like major pieces, and then they refine down. So there's 5 major puzzle pieces. 70% of those are generators and manifesting generators, 35% each. Maybe that would take up the whole sky. Those are the types who are here to use their energy to create, to work, to manifest. They're the worker bees of humanity. They get their pleasure and their joy from actually using their energy. They've got sustainable energy. Right? The manifesting generator, like you are, also has what we call a motor to the throat, which means you can speak and be heard. So you have a capacity to create on your own that is remarkable, just phenomenal, right? We're all looking for a motor to the throat. This is all electromagnetic. And whenever you walk into a room, everybody's empowered just by being around you. You don't have to do anything. Just electromagnetically, I'm more powerful in this room with you than I am on my own. The generators and manifesting generators are designed to wake up in the morning, their motor's running, they go all day long, following their yeses, following what they have a yes for. If they do what they have a no for, they can burn out. But if they're following their yeses, their energy will sustain them. They fall asleep exhausted at night, wake up the next morning, ready to go. Their batteries recharged. Those are the generators and manifesting generators. Like I said, they make up 70% of the puzzle. 21% of the puzzle are what we talked about earlier, the projectors. The next 3 types don't have that sacral energy. They don't have the same access to energy. Now, if you think about it, they are being conditioned by all the sacral energy. They're constantly being told something's wrong with them or that they should be like the other 70%, right?
Are you talking about because of the biases in our culture that rewards
Exactly.
the generator.
Towards work, right?
Yeah.
Toward the bias towards work. Be productive. But these three types have a different job. They have a different dharma. They're bringing a different gift. The projectors are, we call them wise guides. And they're really here to guide energy rather than to do. They're the beers. Doesn't mean that they don't work. I'm not saying that projectors shouldn't work, but they should do things that they find very pleasurable. It has to be pleasurable. It's not a yes, no, should I do this or not do this? It's what feels good to me. Projectors are not easily seen. They're not easily heard. The strategy, they have to wait for an invitation or be recognized before they speak their guidance. I have a kind of a funny analogy that may or may not work for you, but it's like an ATM machine. Like if you don't go up to an ATM machine and put your card in, you're not going to get any money. If you don't recognize a projector or ask it for its gifts, you're not going to get all the wealth that they have. And they are rich and deep. The projectors are incredible. So the strategy for the projectors, I didn't say this for the generators, manifesting generators, the strategy is to wait for an invitation or wait to be recognized before they speak or before they take action. So it's better for a projector to be invited into a relationship rather than invite someone into a relationship, for example. Be invited to a job rather than push their way into a job. You might think of the two, because the two, if they push people away. But if they are in that receiving place, they're very luscious. They can receive people. So it's a little bit like that. Think of a very pushy two. That could be projectors can be rejected because they're trying to get in. They're trying to prove themselves. They're trying to show that they have what it takes. But it's like they're castrated. They don't have that. They really don't have that. They can have more energy than anybody, but it's not sustainable. They're taking in the energy of all the generators and expanding it, magnifying it, but it's not sustainable. They burn out. We're all precious, but I just feel a little protective of the projectors.
I love it. That's 3 of the types, and there are 5, correct?
Yep.
I don't want to distract you too much, but these do conjure up types like the projector. I think of 9, and I have a big question about whether you notice correlations between Enneagram types and human design types.
Let me finish these. We'll swing back to that.
Okay.
So 8% roughly of the population are called manifestors. And they also have that open sacral. They don't have that sustainable energy, but they have what you have. They have that motor to the throat. They're here to impact. They're here to get things going. So if you're talking about maybe an 8, might be there to get something going, to initiate something, right? I would never put them together like that, but you can get the flavor of the energy. You know, they're gonna impact people. People might not like it. They might feel pushed around by a manifestor. Right? Because the manifestor is going to impact people. They're oracally going to impact people. Just their presence is going to impact people, and people don't like to be impacted, right? So they're going to resist. I've worked with young manifestors, and they say, anytime I walk into the room, it feels like everybody hates me. Well, everybody doesn't hate them, but they're feeling the power of this type. It's powerful. People are overwhelmed by power. Can be. Not everybody is, but can be if they're not in their own selves, and if they can't distinguish the different lights in the world, right? Like this is a bright light. The manifestors are here to impact, but their strategy is to inform, to tell people what they're going to do before they do it, because they have a better chance of it being smooth rather than a rough impact. It's not that they don't do what they do, but they're going to have a gentler time with it. The last type is less than 1%, and they're called reflectors. All their centers are open. They are so porous and so open. I guess if you would say anything, I would call them closer to a 9 than anything, actually, because they're just in oneness. They're in oneness with the universe. They're taking everything in, and everything's flowing through them. They don't have a fixed identity. It's always changing. And they're here to reflect the health and well-being of humanity, to show humanity what's possible. They can see possibility for people. They're extraordinarily rare. They're just a whole different creature. So Let me back up a little bit and we do a little weave here and show you why you can't just say, oh, yeah, the manifestors are eights. What happens when you have a projector who's an eight?
Yeah. What does happen? It seems like a conflict.
Exactly. And there are projectors who are eights, and I can tell you why. We look at the chart. Oh, they've got a will center. They're doing, there's something going on in their chart that would indicate that would support that eightness. But it's challenging because they're sitting there with all this power and making messes, basically, by coming out and not being received. Or you have a 9 who's a manifesting generator. And how do they do that? We're looking at complexity here, right? We're looking at... Now, let me just explain this a little bit. Do you have your chart in front of you by any chance?
Yeah, I did have it, and I can get it easily, yeah.
So for people who don't know, the Human Design was downloaded to a Canadian in 1987. He was on retreat off the coast of Spain. His name is Ra, who's no longer on the planet. He was on retreat. He went back to his room, and these light beings downloaded this information over days. And what they said was that this is for the evolution of humanity. It's for everyone, but it's particularly for parents to parent their children.
Oh, yeah. Because
when you know who your child is, you can respond to them according to who they are and not project your idea of who they should be. Right?
Oh, I love that.
I know. It's beautiful. So we take your birth time, date, and place. There's astrology, right? We're using the I Ching instead of the backdrop of Western astrology of the planets, houses, and signs, right? Taurus, whatever. We're using the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So the time of your birth, your planets are in some combination of those 64 hexagrams. Like, for instance, your sun is in gate 12. In Western astrology, what is your sun in?
My sun is in Gemini.
You're a Gemini, yeah. In Human Design, your sun is in the gate 12. Now, this is a gate coming off the throat center, and it's all about, do I speak or not speak? When is the right time to speak? It's the wordsmith. It's the voice that wants to make sure it speaks when someone is listening. It doesn't want to throw its pearls to swine.
Sorry, that's such a good expression, isn't it?
So we take your birth time, and we take 3 months prior to your birth time, and we look at the planets that are in those 64 hexagrams, and we put them together, and it creates this funny little graph that has lines and colors. And the thing about Human Design is your body graph, it shows you, just like your physical body, it shows you where you're defined, not like a egoic patterning. I don't want to say that. Wherever you're colored in your chart, that's where you have consistent access to those energies. So I said the sacral, you have consistent access to your sacral. You have consistent access to your will. You've got a capacity to go out and do things. You have capacity. You're loaded. You have consistent access to your identity center. You have consistent access to your throat. You have consistent access to this impulse to create from your sacral to your throat. So here's what I want to kind of tease apart, if you just bear with me for a second. Where you're defined in your chart, it's a polarity. So you can be on the high side of that energy, or you can be on the low side of that energy. So let's take your spiritual path, and I'll just tie it into your type for a second, your Ennea type. So your spiritual path, your unconscious spiritual path, is in gate 10. This is the gate of self-love. You are here to empower people in loving themselves through you loving yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, if you think of the 4 on the Enneagram, when the 4 goes to self-love, I mean, the whole gig is up. The whole trauma drama is over. It's like there's a stability that comes in. You go to 1, you go to the perfection of all life. It just stabilizes the whole thing. So with this 10, the low side of that is, if you're not self-loving, you go to blame and shame, which is can be very much a 4 victim place, right?
Yep.
So this is unconscious. This is your unconscious side I'm talking about. So that's an example of where you're defined. it's a polarity. You can be on either side of the stick of that polarity, but you're going to be dealing with that issue. That I don't have that same thing in my face all the time. That is always there for you at some level. Unconsciously, you're dealing with that question or that energy. Where you're open in your chart or where it's white, it's not polarities. That's where you're taking in, that's where you can be conditioned. You're taking in and amplifying all the energies around you. Like you have a totally open head. You're taking in everybody's thoughts. If as a child you were told something, the ego doesn't like openness. So that open head of yours, maybe you were told something and you grabbed hold of it and held on to it just to have some kind of, oh yeah, I should be a good person or whatever thought that would be, right? But you're really designed to be open and look at all aspects of life with that open head. You have the mind of a total meditator. You can go into oneness with that head of yours. Do you know this about yourself? Is this familiar?
I focus more on since I learned this about myself, that I have an undefined, is it called a head center? I focused on the negative aspects of that, or rather I've been peppering my friend Kate with, how is that tripping me up? And because what it feels like to me, or how I experience myself in that center, is almost like too open.
Right. So this is your design. So this is where we come in with the judgment could come in. Like maybe you've been told that. Maybe you've been told you're flaky. Maybe you've been told you follow, because your chart is all about ideas. Your other part of your spiritual path is ideas, and it's in your unconscious earth. You're all about ideas. You have more ideas than you know what to do with. There's just, you're flooded. Your head is flooded. It's a pressure center. It's like, but these open centers, this is perfect. Right? We have to start there. This is your gift. This is your dharma. So we can go to what culturally might be judgments on us, or what we might have taken in as judgments. But these are really God portals. These are really places for you to open to connect with the all of life. You have capacities with that totally open head that not many people have.
So what you're speaking to here is the meaning of the closed and defined centers and then the open centers. So you're dealing with the centers aspect of human design now, aren't you?
I'm dealing with the centers, but any openness really. So I was talking about the definition. We have consistent access to those. There's some ground that comes with where we're defined. Even if it's a polarity, there's a ground. Right. It's like, even if the force suffers, at least they have something. At least they're suffering, right? So with this definition, at least there's something there. Whether it's a high side or low side. With the openness, there's no stability. We're at the effect of others and the transiting planets. So the way to get stability is witnessing consciousness, right? When you can witness your thoughts and all your ideas rather than identify with them, that's when you get your stability.
Love that. I feel like witnessing consciousness is the answer to many things, for me anyway.
It totally is. With that open head, oh my gosh. If you can hold your thoughts rather than believe them.
And then can you speak to the undefined thing at the bottom?
The root.
The root, yeah. So what sort of chaos might that engender?
Yeah. So that undefined root, the head and the root are both pressure centers. You're under pressure. You have an interesting chart where you have all this capacity and you have this pressure. So again, say if I were coaching you, for example, I would acknowledge like, oh my gosh, you are always under pressure. And how are you doing with that pressure? Are you dissipating it through activity or trying to dissipate the pressure? Because truly the gift of that totally open root center is to witness the pressure and wait until you have a yes to take action rather than just helter-skelter trying to take action. I mean, focus is one of your challenges, gifts anyway, right? You've got the Uranus and the 9, but this pressure to understand you only have to do things you have a yes for. You don't have to bully yourself into doing things. You don't have to do things just because the people around you feel like you should do things.
Is that the strategy you're referencing there, wait to respond? Or is that to do...
The strategy has to do with that sacral. That defined sacral, it's a motor. It's this big inner GPS that responds to life. So something comes into your field, do you have a yes for it or no for it? And you follow that GPS. You don't go to your head to try to figure it out. Like, do I have a yes for this?
Yep. I am sort of aware of this maybe being a bit difficult for people to follow without sight of my chart. I wonder if, I'm sure there's a way that I can link to my chart in the episode notes so that it's a bit more clear. But sacral authority, what other kinds of authority are there? There's emotional as well, correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, there's emotional. So let's talk about that, because you have sacral authority, because you have that defined sacral.
Yeah.
If you have what we call the emotional solar plexus defined, which you don't, yours is open. So I want to talk about that also. When you have emotional authority, you're designed to make decisions over time, not in the moment. You can make a decision with your sacral authority in the moment. You can get a yes for something or no. It might change when you get more information, but you have that capacity to make decisions in the moment. I don't. I have emotional authority. I get in trouble if I make a decision in the moment. It's much better for me to wait out what we call the emotional wave. There's also splenic authority, which is following your intuition. If you have splenic authority, you have to listen. It's like listening to that deep, small voice inside. And if you miss it, it may come back, but it's a different kind of following. So authority is decision making. How do you best make your decisions? Like if you're a coach and you're working with someone who has, let's say, no authority, the best thing to do, they need to talk and hear themselves speak to know what to do. So you want to give them space to do that.
Oh, I didn't know that was a possibility, to have no authority. That's a possibility in the human design.
That is a possibility. Let me talk about your open emotional solar plexus for a second, because we're talking about 4 in the Enneagram.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're looking at what might be pieces of 4 in the chart. Okay, so there's so much I want to say. It's a traffic jam in my head. That's fine.
Okay.
So your moon, it's what drives us, is in gate 18. It's the gate of correction. We could call that very one-ish, right? The one wants to correct things. The one wants things to be perfect. The one wants things to be perfect outside of themselves so they can feel good inside in that way. But at the exalted way, they really can see the perfection of all things. When you go to 1, there's an integration. There's a settling. There's a wisdom place there for you. So that 18, the high side of that 18 is like the 1, and it's driving you. In any situation, you're looking to, how can I upgrade this? I need to upgrade this situation. However that shows up for you, I'm not sure. With the 4, you've got an open, what we call emotional solar plexus, that triangle on the right, and an emotional spleen, that triangle on the left. Emotional solar plexus is about emotions. Yours is open. With 1 gate, we call it, hanging off of it, the gate 36, which is called the gate of crisis. It sounds a little foreign. The 36, and that is in your unconscious Mercury. Okay, so it's what you like to talk about. You like to talk about crisis.
Everyone who knows me, who's listening right now, is rolling their eyes.
And you're also very enthusiastic. That's the other thing you like to talk about. You're very enthusiastic. So you're enthusiastic about crisis. Now, how 4 is that? It's very 4. Add to that, you have this open emotional solar plexus. You're taking in everybody's feelings and amplifying them. When you're on your own, when you're not spinning in your head, when you're on your own, I'm guessing you're pretty even. Yeah, there's a stability there. You're not getting whacked by everybody's feelings. Now, we're taught to believe those are our feelings. And I want to propose that they're not. All that emotional turmoil is the turmoil. Just play with this and see if it fits. This is all testing for yourself. All that emotional turmoil is what you're picking up around you and identifying as your own.
Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? An interesting way to consider 4-ness from that perspective, isn't it?
It is. Now, that I don't want to suggest that, you've got an open emotional solar plexus, you're a 4. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying how it supports what might be some of the challenges and strengths that you're looking at when you look at your particular puzzle piece, which is perfect. But we all have lessons. We all have pieces to learn and navigate.
Yeah.
And then you have the one on the left is the open spleen, and that's the fear. That's fear and anxiety, a fear center. So you're taking in everybody's fears and amplifying those fears. So in wherever those centers are open, they're like filters, and our job is to filter out what's not ours and come into that openness. Our power is in that awareness, in the open awareness. That's where the power is. The discerning wisdom is in that openness. Witnessing emotions, watching them rather than identifying with them, witnessing fears rather than identifying with them, witnessing pressures rather than identifying with them, witnessing thoughts rather than identifying with them.
Is that a central tenet of the human design approach, is developing witnessing consciousness over these aspects of us?
That is the way I approach it, and maybe that is from all of my work, because like every system, there can be a very negative look at the chart too. Like, oh my God, you've got the 10. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, you're an 8. Oh my God, you're a 4. Oh my God, you've got the 10. Oh my God, you've got the 51. You're here to shock people. Oh my God. Right?
That sounds fun. I kind of now want to ask you about all the terrible stuff. I'm not going to, because that's just me doing my thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, the way I talk about it is there's yellow flag gates. And here I live here in Maui, and I was taught them as red flag gates, but that's not right. It's like when you go to the ocean and the flag is out, if it's red, it means do not enter. If it's yellow, it means enter with caution. Right?
Yeah.
So these yellow flag gates are like, oh yeah, we need to be more aware. When I see someone with a 10, I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to say, listen, this is crucial for you. It's in your spiritual path. This is really an important thing for you to develop and work on and master. Yeah. This is crucial for you being in alignment with yourself and bringing the gifts you're here to bring.
It's I'm not going to use the word complex. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of guidance I'm sensing that can be had from learning the design, the human design, for ourselves, for our clients as well. I have a question about, is it worthwhile to combine them? So is it worthwhile to use the Enneagram and use human design as a coach?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're
no
like,
question. Duh. I mean, I often, like, the way I work with a human design chart, it's relational. It's not like, oh, let me give you a reading and give you an information dump. I'm connecting you to your chart. I'm connecting you to the transmission of your chart. I'm putting the power back in your hands. This isn't me and my knowledge. This is you in relationship to the chart. Now, the Enneagram brings a whole, I often ask people, do you know your Enneatype? I don't always, but I often do when I'm doing a human design coaching session, just an initial one, because it helps me orient how to talk about the chart with them.
Yeah, makes sense.
And what might be some of the challenges, being a 1, being a 4, being an 8, how some of the conundrums that might come up or how they might work with that. But I want to give you an example that I think is super interesting. Like the way I was taught Enneagram, I loved what Beatrice was saying, we take time with it. We don't just assume someone's something. And I remember with Faisal, someone would start with one Enneatype, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, they'd reveal a different, it shift. A lot of times, some of those more subtle ones, the 5 and the 9, some of these would show up differently. And I've seen that with my own clients. So my wife is a 4. I've said that. She was typed before I met her. And then she studied with Faisal. And she, of course, we evolve, we grow. And a lot of the drama that she had fell away. And she's a projector. And people who know the Enneagram start saying, you're not a 4, you're a 9. And I used to joke about her and say, you're a 4 with a 9 wing, because I could see what they were saying. But she was definitely a 4. How she dresses, what she does, she's a 4, right? And then I was looking at her chart, and she's you're called a single definition. There's a flow with all your lines. I'm a single definition. She's called a triple split. So there's 3 different areas in her chart that are hooked up separately. They're not connected to each other. So when information comes in, it takes her a bit longer to sort through it and see how's she going to respond to it? Is she going to respond to it from a head place? Is she going to respond to it from an emotional place? Is she going to respond to it from what's the third one? from like a heart place, heart, emotion, which is different than emotion, heart, emotion, or head place. And what we realized when we looked at it is it's depending on where she's processing, the 9 or the 4 side of her shows up. Isn't that trippy?
Yeah, that is trippy. That is trippy.
It was mind-blowing to me, like, oh my gosh, I get this now.
And maybe she works with the type 4 and the type 9 patterns, right? For reasons unknown. Like some people would call that tri-type or whatever. It almost doesn't matter if she experiences some 9 stuff and some 4 stuff. So combining the systems is definitely something you would advocate and encourage.
The Enneagram is its own genius. It's so helpful to see our patterns. It's so helpful. If I'm in 4 and Yarrow says to me, you're in 4, it's like, snap, wake up. I'm believing that. I'm believing whatever that drama is in that moment.
Yeah.
I've gone to a collapsed place. She says it and I just snap too. Because I know enough now about my patterns to know, oh yeah, that's where I am. And I can see, she goes to 2, like, oh my gosh, you're in 2 right now. We're going into this interaction. Please don't go to 2. I need you here. So we can joke about it. We can laugh about it. We can work with it. We can work with our patterns. So it's really helpful to use that. Like, I don't know how it will help you now. I'm curious to see how it helps you when you look at your 4 with that 10 or with that 36 or with that open emotional centers. Like, instead of, I don't know, maybe my hope with Human Design, it gives us a little distance from identifying with ourselves so tightly. A little like, oh, of course. Well, no wonder this is coming up. It's not because I've been injured, not because I'm a victim of something. Yeah. Yes, of course I would use these strategies. Given this chart, it would make sense I would use these strategies.
It reinforces something I've noticed with Kate, is just it opens up more self-compassion, acceptance. Enneagram does that too, to an extent. I don't know though, it's not a really direct route to it with the Enneagram. You have to work for that, for the compassion aspect. I don't know why that is. It could just be, it could be the focus of the way it's been taught. The general focus has been on the pathological elements.
Can I say one more thing about 4?
Yeah, please.
I'm just looking at your chart. And so you have gate 28, which is the gate of struggle. I have that gate.
That sounds fun.
We're designed to struggle. Right? So it's in Saturn. Saturn is in that gate 28 for you. Saturn is a spiritual teacher that wants to keep you on track. So it's going to give you corrections. The thing about struggle is it can be an identity, right? We can grab hold of it and suffer with it. Or it can be a recognition of, what do you have a yes to struggle with? Do you have a yes to struggle with learning the Enneagram? Do you have a yes to struggle with learning Human Design as a language, like you would learn a language? Like, it's complex, but you start simple and you build and you find your way with it. Is that a good struggle for you? Instead of being victimized by struggle, right, which the 4 could grab hold of, you can say, okay, I'm struggling with this. Is this what I want to struggle with? Is there a better struggle for me?
I love that. That's great.
So that takes it to the empowerment out of the, I'm a victim of this pattern.
Can we say a quick word about this not self thing, Robin? Because I've seen, mine says frustration. I've seen on other people's there's anger. So is this is the affect, the dominant affect when we're not living according to our design? Is that how you would describe it or not?
So think of it this way. And I don't like using the term not self. Personally, that doesn't fit my paradigm, but I'll use it since that is the language that is.
What's your language? What's your language for it?
When we're not in alignment with ourselves. Yeah. I still tend to veer away from what seems pathologizing or demeaning. So when we're not in alignment, when you're not following your sacral yes, you get frustrated. Yeah. Does that fit your experience?
Oh my God. I spend my life being frustrated. There's an echo now that I can hear myself saying that. But yeah, I think frustration, because I've been relating to that in Enneagram terms, frustration is the object relation or the dominant affect for 4, for 1, and for 7. And I've been exploring how I experience frustration a lot, and it's very common and overriding sort of emotion. It's not an emotion, is it? Frustration, but an experience for me. Yeah.
So I would invite you to check when you're frustrated, are you following your sacral yes? Are you doing something you don't have a yes for? Or have you hit a plateau and you need to reorient and upgrade to the next level? Because frustration is a natural part of mastery, right? So we hit it, we can make it wrong, or we can say, okay, how do we tweak this? Does more energy need to be put in this? Do I need to back off from it? Do I need to abandon it? It becomes an inquiry rather than a right or wrong. It's like a yellow flag coming up. Okay, let me just pay more attention here.
I see. Yeah.
Then there's something wrong.
So it's an opportunity, an inquiry sort of opportunity, frustration for me. And there are others. So is it a different one for each type signal?
Yeah, so you've got frustration and anger, right?
Oh, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the manifestor part gets angry.
Mm-hmm.
You want to impact. When you're not making your impact, you get mad.
Yeah.
There's a madness, a natural kind of madness. So you want to witness that and watch that and see, have you informed people? Have you followed that? Because you're here to respond and inform, right? That manifestor part has to inform. I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm letting you know I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. Right? Rather than you can just go do everything you want on your own, right? You have that capacity. Yeah, you have.
Oh, so I don't know why I've obviously got the giggles now. I hope anyway that with our conversation is giving people some taste of what the human design system can contribute or offer. And I'd love to hear about what you're currently doing. So the new book is out. Can you tell me about the new book and also tell me about, please, how coaches can, so how do they engage with you? Is it one-on-one or are you offering group trainings in this?
Right. My latest book is out. It's called Unleashing the Profiles in Human, it's called Understanding the Profiles in Human Design. I'm looking at it right now. The Facilitator's Guide to Unleashing Potential. And it's a really great place to start. If you're new to human design, you can just pick it up. You can run somebody's chart, look at their profiles, look at your own profile, and start to get a flavor. You haven't read about your 5-1 profile yet.
No.
So you're like what's called a 5-1 profile. Mm-hmm. And there's 12 profiles. And the 5 is here to save the world.
Sounds like a responsibility.
Does that resonate with you? Do you feel like you're...
I don't know. Kate and I have been talking about this. What the name of the guy who downloaded Human Design was a 5-1.
Heretic.
Yeah,
he called it the Heretic. But it's also the Visionary Guide. It's the Heretic because it's here to bring solutions. It's here to bring new solutions. And new solutions aren't always welcome. Galileo was a heretic for bringing the information he was bringing to the planet, right? He almost went to jail for his thoughts and his understandings.
Yeah. So the new book is about that aspect, like what it means to have that profile 5-1.
Different profiles, yeah. So the first book is about the 5 types, and the second book is about the centers, the open and defined centers. They're all resource books. I write them in a style that is hopefully easy to read and understand.
Yeah, brilliant, so brilliant. I love them. I'm going to, like I say, I'm halfway through the centers. I'd love the profiles one next. So you're saying people could start with the latest one in theory?
Yeah, you could. Absolutely. Totally. And you said something, you said it's complex. And I do want to say that anything that's complex, if you break it down into simple, it's like language. If you want to learn a language, if you want to learn to read, you break it down and then put it together.
Totally.
So I just want to say it can be simple. It just takes the right breaking down and looking through your own experience and connecting to it and having a lived experience rather than trying to get it in your head.
Yep.
So I teach, that's what I do. I teach a high-end program for coaches and therapists, an intensive program to help them both transform themselves through the experience of their connection to the human design chart and wake up the transformational process with their clients.
Wow. When you say high end, for people who have already...
No, you can be a brand new beginner.
Okay.
It's just that I work with small groups.
Okay.
So it's not a big, massive program. It's a very hands-on, relational, in-depth program.
Over Zoom, or I'm guessing, because
it's over Zoom.
All right. Well, is this a good place to park the exploration?
I think it's a good place. I invite anybody who's interested in learning more about using human design to contact me. Robin at clientsandhumandesign.com. And I'm happy to send you the free download to the first book if you'd like that. We can put that in the chat as well, or in your notes.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much. The next chat is with Dr. Mary Phyllis. We'll be talking about her method of transformation that incorporates the wisdom of the Enneagram.